I think this is the first time that we've started like almost exactly on time.
Never happened before. I don't
Never
think.
happened before. No. Green screens with special treatment, but I'm glad to have you guys here today.
Thanks for having us.
What's going on?
That music just got me hyped. I'm stoked.
Let's go.
That's my alarm sound. No, I'm just kidding. That'd be kind of crazy.
Honestly, Reed, I wouldn't. I would totally see it. Just waking up to your Gong. I'm sure your wife would be happy with it.
Does my camera look like really dark? Am I like really dark? Why is it like this?
A little bit.
Maybe it's because of my brick background. All right.
Yeah, just turn off the brick background.
I'm
gonna keep the flag.
There we go. That's what I like to see.
I got all my crap behind me right now. Yeah. Oh,
nice. Well,
I got my green screens truck around here somewhere. I don't know where it is. But I do have this. There we go.
Yeah,
nice.
Talk data to me.
Nice.
I got some green screens. I got my sticker right here. Ooh.
No BS, just GS. Let's go.
Very cool.
So what's up? What's going on? What are we doing today?
We're going to talk about seasonality, right?
Seasonality. How they change and so you have a presentation, some things that you prepared to share. I'm personally really excited to learn about it here from Greenscreens' perspective. But maybe you guys can introduce yourselves real quick for the audience.
Sure, that'd be great. Justin, you go first.
I'm Justin Runia. I am a data analyst here at Greenscreens. I've been here for a couple of years now. Prior to that, I worked at C.H. Robinson for 6 years in last mile. We as an analyst at Greenscreens, I work with a good number of customers, getting their models up and healthy so that once their models are strong enough, we can include them in the Greenscreens network, right, and strengthen that up and get it more useful to everybody.
Very cool.
Interesting.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Sean. I've been with Greenscreens for almost 3 years now. So longest lasting American still in the business besides Don, our CEO. So that's my claim to fame, if I have any. I was an analyst. I was the first analyst that's still around back in the day when I started, and then I transitioned into a product role. So now I'm just making sure that we build to what our customers want and to what our customers need. So really heavily focused on product and how we build all those things. Still doing some analytics work here and there when it's necessary, just dipping my toes in SQL when I can, when I have to, but mostly focused on product. So yeah.
Cool. Awesome. So Sean and Justin, you both prepared a presentation for us today where we're going to do a little deep dive into rates and produce seasonality. I'm going to pull it up right now, Sean, if you're ready for it. I'll get it pulled up here on stage. I think you might want to click on the slideshow button just so that's full screen on the right side.
Man, I never do this. Right up here. Where's slideshow? There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
Perfect.
Okay, cool.
Right.
So Justin, Sean, if you could walk us through what you prepared here, and we'll definitely Reed and Christian and I will have some questions for you as we go along.
Yeah, I can tee it up here. So, over the past few years, Greenscreens has been gathering customer data. Every customer submits us data on a regular basis. By regular, I mean most of our customers are submitting us their load data on a daily basis, some even on a minute-by-minute basis. But yeah, so we're getting data as quick as anybody in the industry, mostly just driven directly from the TMS over to us. So it's true load data that we're getting. And so we get to see kind of all of the trends that have happened over the past, I would call it like 4 years is probably when the data is really trustworthy. We've been around for about 3, but we ask customers to go back a few years to give us a bunch of data so that we can kind of help build the model around how their buying power exists. And, they want their data to be as clean as possible because we build models for every individual customer, right? So we build an ML model for them and we clean all their data prior to doing it. So we have a very rigorous cleaning process that each customer goes through. And so that's really the basis for the data. It's super clean, a super clean data set. where we can start to kind of tease out what's going on in the market. And over the past, I don't know, since 2021 or the COVID madness, the market has been in a fairly unique place, right? We've had a drop in rates. I mean, an increase in rates and then a crazy drop in rates. The magnitudes of which we had never seen before, or I had never seen before, and probably most people in freight had never seen before. We think now that we're getting back to kind of a more normal market where seasonality is something that can be seen and better understood against the backdrop of normalcy instead of like the market's just always falling by 3% month in and month out, or the market's always increasing by 3% month in and month out. And so we now have this ability with this large, really clean data set and some normal time to really think about like what's actually going on with seasonality in a bunch of different markets. How does that affect our business? How do our models work with that? Primarily today, we're going to start really macro, start at really wide level, and then start zooming in on smaller and smaller markets and just kind of show you how we're thinking about the seasonality problem, especially around produce because we're in the midst of it. Kicked off a couple of months ago in the South, and now we're in the heat of it. So that's any
Awesome.
questions before we jump in?
I'm excited to see the data. Christian, Reed?
I am too.
No, let's do it.
All right, sweet. So just some context. So we're going to be looking mostly at reefer data, right? Year over year, price declines in reefer have limited reefer capacity. So trucks have been going out of the market, right, over the past year. And so as capacity limits those price swings during seasonality, what we're seeing is that those price swings are increasing in magnitude. We're seeing more seasonality this year than we've seen in the past. And so then we've kind of got some like, what should brokers do to prepare for this seasonality? I know we're kind of halfway through it, but there's still stuff you can do on a market by market basis to prepare. Some of the key terms, just in case you guys aren't aware, some of them are proprietary. So market area is fairly straightforward. We just use the market areas that are used, industry wide. The expensiveness is a proprietary calculation that we do, and it's really designed to be able to compare price from one lane to another. Every lane has its different cost structure. Mileage affects lanes probably the most of any characteristic of a lane. But we have built a way that we can try to kind of compare different lanes to each other so that you can essentially see across the market what's happening. We call it expensiveness, because if you were to just aggregate all your lanes into one big group and just look at your rate per mile across all those lanes, if you had a lot of long hauls, then your rate per mile would be really low. If you had a lot of short hauls, your rate per mile would be really high. And if that mix changed, then it would give you a false signal of like, prices are increasing, but really you might just be getting more short hauls in your data set. So we use this expensiveness to kind of aggregate that out, that problem, and be able to compare across the entire market. Cost trend, we're just looking at like a week over the previous month change. And then average cost trend is cost trend over the past 3 months. So those are some of the key terms and kind of the basis of the metrics that we'll be looking at today. Sweet. So then this is the last thing that I'll get into, just to tee it up. I know we've kind of teased this already. So that price increase that happened into the end of 21, beginning of 22, it happened on both van and reefer. And I think actually it happened a little bit in flatbed, but not nearly to the extremes that van and reefer had. At Greenscreens, just as a caveat, at Greenscreens, we really right now are primarily working with van, reefer, and flatbed data. That's what we build models for. We're opening that up to more modes in the future, but right now it's just van, reefer, flatbed. And so for those reefers, the price peaked like at the beginning of 22, January, February in there, and then has been on a long, slow decline until I would say about a year ago. And then we saw things start to flatten out. You can notice here things like this spike is end of year, right? So like you've got Christmas, New Year's, all that stuff falling right here.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing going on right here. You got end of year And then you also, this year in 2024, we had a huge storm that swept across the Midwest and Northeast, and even actually into the Northwest a little bit. And that storm caused this kind of major distortion all throughout all of January in prices, both in reefer and van. And actually, I don't know if you guys remember, but a lot of people were saying, "Oh, this is the signal to like prices are gonna go up. You know, we're having this bull run now."
I heard that.
But that storm, yeah, it was all over the place. But it was really just a head fake. It was just a storm and it was huge, and that makes sense. When there's a big storm, there's problems with supply, and still need to move stuff. But yeah, we just didn't see it, and prices.
1 second.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's some background noise in the back. I'm kind of trying to. I don't know whose background noise it is. Okay, Justin, that was you. Okay, got it. Just kind of. I guess it'd be. No, it's all good. So the average expensiveness in the slide beforehand, you explained what expensiveness is, and it's kind of a term like because this is not obviously the rate per mile, right? Average on the left hand side.
So
can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah,
so
we put it into exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So we put it into rate per mile terms. But essentially, what we're doing is for every load that we see coming in, that's a reefer load in this case. That's a true load, and we're not filtering it out from the models because we do see it as a real valid truckload being moved. What we do is we apply a formula to it that basically takes out the mileage impact on that lane, right? So mileage is the biggest impact on the load's rate. And we want to try, like with something like this, we want to be able to compare, we want to look at the entire macro market, and we want to compare long hauls to short hauls as best as we possibly can and have them in one aggregated metric and one index, right? It's like if you were looking at the S&P 500. The S&P 500 has Microsoft in it, and it also has mom and pop, 500 smallest company. I don't even know who, right?
Yeah.
But those are very different prices, and they kind of index them all together based on market cap and weighting there. We're not doing it based on that. Volume counts here. So, but we're just basically taking out the mileage difference for every single load, or the impact of the mileage difference on rates. Yeah.
Okay. So, Justin, I'm guessing you want to say something?
I'm going to start talking about the specific examples here in a second. I just took care of my background noise for you. Thanks.
Oh, sounds good. Thanks, Justin. So it looks like this year's produce season is more or less on the same level in terms of the reefer expensiveness as it was last year. Doesn't seem like there has been any real change year over year.
Really tough to see in this view, because we are looking at the entire reefer market, and produce has a tendency to hit different pockets of the country at different times, right? And so it's really hard to see the change year over year on this. We'll get into that change here in a sec on a market by market basis, and you'll be able to see it's definitely impacting a little bit more this year than it was last year. Yeah.
Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah. I think people are, everybody kind of knows that we've been down, are we able to, I guess maybe you'll get to this, but what are your guesses for the future?
The crystal ball, huh?
Yeah. What's the crystal ball say?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've got a view I could show at the end that might give you some stuff on what's going on with the spot and contract market and what the difference is there. It's not on the slide deck, but I could pull it up and we could share it. I'll get it loaded up while we're.
So if anyone's listening right now, you need to wait till the end to hear about the forecast just Sean has. So we'll keep them hanging.
It's going to be a lock in.
Yeah, exactly.
Stay tuned.
Exactly. Cool.
Yeah.
So I guess let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, absolutely. Justin, go for it.
Thanks, Sean. So what Sean was mentioning, he pointed out some spikes that we see pretty much across every market. Just to back up a second. So when we say seasonality, there's a couple things that people mean. the first definition is like just a thing that happens the same time every year. And so that's the first kind of seasonality I'm going to talk about, is like event seasonality, holiday seasonality, and kind of how that intersects with the produce market. So these lines you're seeing here on the screen, that top line is the expensiveness for the Miami, Florida market, outbound. I've labeled on there, you can see with a couple emojis, various holiday events that are happening during the course of the year. What's notable about Miami is that it is a port that receives a lot of flowers, most of the flowers for the eastern seaboard of the United States. And the delivery of flowers is highly attenuated to those specific days. You may have some experience with this. You don't want late flowers, and the flowers aren't they spoil pretty fast. So there's a high premium on getting them to the market from the port. And so we can see sort of pegged to those dates, a very steep increase in reefer rates in order to get those spoilable commodities out to market. And so, this is a very clear example of something that's pegged directly to holidays. There are some other produce that's less so, but flowers being the like key example of that. If we take a look at the next market, take a look at Yuma. So this is the Yuma market. Same deal. Instead of holidays here, though, I have some key commodities that come out of Yuma. They're growing things in beds and in greenhouses, so they can grow all year long. Their lettuce and greens is not really tied to any particular holiday. However, watermelon consumption, we do a lot of that in June and July, and so that's planted in order to get to market during that time. And so we can see the seasonality spikes for these commodities, except because it's sunny all year round and not a lot of weather, they can grow all year round. And so because they're doing that, they have a pretty good standing carrier base to service that area, and the seasonality spikes we see out of there are not very high compared to what we saw in Miami, those very straight up and down spikes. And so that's something that we see in Yuma. Let's take a look at the next example.
One quick thing that I wanted to add here too, just because the average expensiveness still might not ring super true to everybody. It's a new metric. We use average expensiveness even when we're talking about an outbound origin, because those lanes that are coming out of, say, Yuma or Miami are all different, right? Like might be Yuma to Chicago and Yuma to LA, and those are very different lanes. And so we still like to compare across all lanes. Whenever Greenscreens is trying to compare across lanes, we try to use an expensiveness metric. We don't use it in the product anywhere right now. Like it's not actually in the product that we're showing. But whenever we're doing research, that's like a tendency that we try and have. If we're comparing one lane to itself, then no problem. We'll just use price. But we found it a lot better to use expensiveness to just take out that noise, even when the origin's the same. So I just wanted to kind of drill that in.
Yeah, and another mitigating factor, to go back to Yuma for 1 second, is when you're shipping from the coast, the variance between your lanes is as high as it can be. You could go across the country, you could go short haul. When you're in the middle of the country, that variance reduces, and matching up and finding the right combination of drivers that want to go where you want to go is easier to do. So something that does amplify seasonality is when you're producing on the coast and you are sort of geographically bound and limited, and you have fewer options and more variability. All right, now I'm ready for the next slide, Sean. Thanks. Cool. So one thing that we do notice is that markets will feel seasonality even though they're not producing any commodities. They're not doing very much harvest. The reason is, when there is high demand, they're going to draw the standing carrier capacity from all the neighboring markets, and that's going to make it harder to find trucks. And so that makes these market trends more into regional trends.
Justin, this is so just so that it's clear, these bar charts here, each bar is an individual week, right? And this is from
Yes, sir.
March of this year, March of this year to May of this year, right?
This was the kickoff of Northern California produce season. Pretty big bread basket area through San Francisco, Stockton, and Reno. Pulls capacity from all around in order to get all that stuff to market.
That's interesting. So there's basically no
and you can
produce
see
going out of Reno, and that kind of makes sense because it's a desert out there.
So there's no volume. Like the volume trend that happens in San Francisco doesn't happen in Reno. You just don't see that like pickup, but the price still increases at a pretty similar rate because you're pulling a truck from Francisco or vice versa. Your capacity is just lessened.
Now, what type of freight, what type of produce typically moves maybe out of San Francisco during this March to May period?
All kinds of produce. They're growing tomatoes, cucumbers, sweet corn, staple crops. The Central Valley, California grows
Bread basket, bro.
Yeah, so they're quite busy right now.
Strawberry. I mean, there's produce moving out of that area like all year.
Yeah, I figured, but there is a steady increase, obviously, from this chart that we can see. Like that means that there's more of something being produced and needing to be shipped than would have otherwise been outside that time period.
And for certain things, just for store displays, red fruits, strawberries, cherries, watermelons, just a high commercial demand for that. And so people plant in order to hit those market timings.
Cool.
So so we have regional effects that are happening when key markets are having a high need to get things to market. We can measure it. This is our current seasonality index for this week. As you can see, you might be able to see if you squint over on the right.
Is that Tifton, Georgia?
Yes,
like the top one.
Tifton. Okay, that's been hot.
And the
for
Savannah, Jacksonville, Reno, El Paso. Wellington.
So that's your tree-based fruits, your stone fruits, and various things that flower during that one time of year that determines most of this for that region. But throughout the entire Sun Belt, since late April through present, they're exploding. They're right on the end of this though. Probably within a couple of weeks, they're going to flip down, and we're going to start seeing some upper Midwest markets, Indiana, Wisconsin through Michigan. Their growing season, they being further north, they get more sun during the day, and they're about ready to pop. So we've been taking a look at this and seeing kind of like how the shift goes through the markets. Sean, I rigged up a little Excel desktop animation here. We'll give it a whirl here.
Oh, this one works, right? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Sure.
So this would be
you got it.
This would be the movement of these markets over the course of the year. You can see there's a strong regional correlation with all of these that are, it's the geometry of the United States coming into play. And
that's really cool.
As Sean had mentioned before, we're just now maybe in this year having a steady enough market that we can look back over the past 2 to 3 years and feel good about, what was happening last June is probably a good indicator for us in this June and July. So we're really excited. We've started, everybody comes to us and everybody has these same questions of, we know 4th of July is coming. Where is it in the pricing? And we've been, getting it in there as much as we can, but we have some new stuff in the pipeline that's looking very great with that regard. That's just a fun
I'll
little
just
chart.
And just describing this chart a little bit so that if you can't see this, for those who are just listening along. So we're starting, it'll start here at the beginning, like the spring of 2023, once it starts again. And you can see basically nothing is increasing, no markets. And then seasonality starts, this produce season, and the entire Southeast just kind of lights up. And then it moves north into the Midwest and Northeast. And then it just kind of flattens out again. Not much of a pattern. And then boom, come 4/24 and into May 24, you see the same thing happen again, where the Southeast just really lights up. At the right end, we see a price increase all over the Southeast and South. And then it's right now we expect that's going to pretty quickly shift into the Midwest. So anybody, you guys have any thoughts or questions on this one? I know somebody was.
I love the visualization. It'd be pretty cool to know, like, in addition, kind of like side by side to this, based on this chart actually shifting, which is awesome. Like, which geographic area am I actually like looking at in terms of? Like,
so it's color coded, right? I know.
Yes,
right. Yeah. What are the color codes again on it? I'm just curious.
So red is Southeast,
Okay.
orange is the South, yellow is Southwest, dark blue
is Midwest, I think.
Yes.
Or no,
that light blue
I think it's Northeast.
That light teal blue, I believe, is the Northeast, and green is the Midwest.
Okay.
Cool.
And yeah, you'll probably see that in some more marketing materials from us shortly.
Awesome.
Cool.
So good way to educate brokers on just seasonality and market shifts. It's a nice way to put it together. So
and
really appreciate that.
Always keep in mind that this is reefer specific. We see this to a less degree in van, but yeah, this is our reefer seasonality right here.
Got it.
One thing to note too, when Justin, this is Justin's baby, by the way. Justin's the analyst who put a lot of this together and was kind of thinking through this problem for the past, since seasonality started, since the produce season started the past couple of months here. One thing to note is that when he was researching this originally, my dumb guy idea of like, one way we should kind of think about this is how many of these markets from last year that were in the top 10 biggest price trend are now this same week this year in that price trend top 10. And I think, Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, but on average it was like 8 of those top 10 markets transferred over year. And so like there's quite a bit of consistency year over year within these markets. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. And we don't have them up right now, but we can look at the past ones in a little bit if you want, and kind of just see what's coming next, maybe kind of coming next. Seasonality, if you guys want.
Definitely.
Cool.
So what you're seeing here.
Hey guys, one question. I don't. Why would a produce season, which is typically kind of like where we see surges, why would the surges be different year to year? Is there less volume? Like, if there's less volume of produce freight, why is that? Like, are they growing?
You gotta ask God that one, man. Dr. Farmer, they'll tell you to ask God.
Yeah, Sean didn't say that. Most of it doesn't change.
I know he didn't say that. I'm just trying to ask. I'm just trying to ask a very general question here. Like, I assume volumes don't really change that much. I mean, people plant what they think they're going to sell, and in the stores, and obviously this spike in rates or whatever we're measuring are going to be affected by more than just the volume of produce shipments, right? Because it's going to be about the volume of all the other shipments too. So
Yeah, we are going to cover that a little bit when we get to the macro. It does come down to how well the carriers are, set up for that season. And so if we're looking at it just in terms of not separate from commodity volume and just pricing changes, we've seen some shifts over the past couple of years that will, while not good for carriers overall, kind of increase carrier pricing power and make it so things are more expensive, or carriers have different places that they could be to make just as much money. And so that will, spike prices when there is a capacity issue. I think go ahead, Sean.
I would think there's really like a few different ways to look at this problem, right? So you've got demand shifts, and then you've got supply shifts, and then maybe price shifts even cause problems, right? Or cause differences, right? So demand shifts can be like, I don't know, maybe there's huge fad or craze over avocados this year that there wasn't last year, or something weird like that, or certain type of flower, or maybe people have the money now to buy more flowers, or whatever it might be. So that's kind of like a demand shift side thing that can happen. There's the supply side that can happen, right? Where the rain gods just didn't rain as much in a given area, and so there's just less stuff coming out, right? And so there's less supply to be moved. And then the third, the price shift thing, if prices increase a bunch or decrease a bunch, then that's going to affect how willing people are to ship freight out of a given area to another area, right? So like if prices increase a ton, let's just say, for example, if prices increase a ton on freight, maybe the producer or whoever's moving that freight is going to be less likely to send it a really long way and kind of try and push off those costs to the next person down the rung. And so maybe their mix of like mileage will come down or something like that, right? Which can change what's going on in the rate trend. It's probably not going to affect much here because we're looking at expensiveness again. So we're taking that mileage problem out. But I would say those are probably the main three things that can happen, that do happen, that cause shifts in one market or another. And I would imagine, I could be totally wrong about this, I haven't done a ton of research here, but I would imagine a lot of it has to do with the supply side. Like, it's just you might have 10% bigger yield this year than you did last year, or 5% less, and that can cause, price is set at the margin, so that can cause differences in price.
I talked to Kenny Lund last year from Ellen Lund, and he was telling us, because they started as like a produce brokerage in the sense of like just they were focused on shipping produce back in the day, and they still do a lot of produce from California. And so like obviously like the droughts, or I guess if it's not a drought and then it's too much rain pour, might ruin the crops as well. But overall, he did say that there's been a ton of change geographically speaking, that a lot of produce comes from Mexico nowadays, more so than it used to. So that's also like regionally shifting and stuff like that. So I guess there's various factors to it, Reed. But yeah, overall,
there's a million factors, obviously.
But it'd be the supply side. It wouldn't be like, I guess that wouldn't be like Sean's or Justin's. Like, I guess like you guys are just thinking what the rates are, not actually like, checking to see if there's more or less supply, right? Like, or why
we're using rates as a proxy for like what's going on demand and supply wise. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, is it like your ambition to get to a point where you are able to contextualize the rate information more, right? Like, is that something you guys think about? Like, are you looking to do that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think like, inputting, if we can figure out a good way to input supply and demand effectively into our models, really effectively, that would be ideal. And right now, primarily the models just run off of rate, because those are actually the best proxies that we have found for supply and demand. Finding like the underlying reasons is very difficult. It's it's like it's just very difficult to figure out what those are, and everybody's got a story for what those could
Yeah,
be, right? And
you kind
so
of
you
like end up
basically
reading tea leaves. I mean, it's
yeah,
yeah.
essentially,
But I
yeah.
mean, this is all data that helps providers quote business for the next year, right? Like it's I mean, produce is a lot of these carriers are quoting produce business. Like a lot of it's spot, but I mean there is contract business too, you know.
Yes.
And so I mean it's a sophisticated somebody who actually does produce is gonna like there's probably gonna be a bunch of stuff that goes into their willingness to use raw rate data to quote future business, right? Like, does that make is that a fair statement? I'm kind of just
Yeah,
speaking
totally.
here. My
Need some
thoughts aren't
coffee, Reed.
fully. I got some. I got some coffee. I'm waking up right now. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it.
Let's go to next slide. Let's see what's on the next slide.
Yeah.
And
so let's talk about some big increases that we've seen year over year in some of these seasonal markets. That first, these by the way are some information that we started working with Freight Caviar and promoting. So you should see these sorts of charts in various places and promotional materials. The first one that you see there is San Francisco to Ontario. We had a 15% increase over the past year in terms of seasonality. It's sitting at $3.10 a mile. What we've seen as a destination, California is getting a little bit more expensive compared to some of the alternatives. A little bit of that is in summertime. We do switch over our gas blends and make it a little bit more expensive to get to various points in our state. The next one you see there is Phoenix to Denver. We're seeing a lot of increases in that short to mid, 600 to 800 mile range. This is a little bit short of that. And yeah, it's a pretty steep increase going straight up over those mountains, similarly. And the last one, the second to highest increase we saw this past month is Atlanta across the country to California, 42% increase, very big jump. An indicator to us that, we're at least, if not turning a corner, that the prices are, not dropping very fast anymore. It's looking pretty good. If you go to the next slide, you can maybe start to get an indication why we think that might be. So yeah, this is the Tifton, Georgia market. Just as a reminder that one on the top is our expensiveness and the one on below is the cost trend. You can see in the expensiveness year over year, we've had in the off season 3 years of declines. And so similarly, that spike that we see in expensiveness during this year's seasonality has brought the prices right back up to what they were the year prior instead of being below what it was the prior year. There's two things going on there. It could be that we are finally turning a corner, but one thing that does happen when there are year-over-year price decreases is that it has an effect on the market. Carriers don't want to carry in these areas anymore, or they can't carry in those areas anymore, and they merge with somebody or stop carrying altogether. And so when there is seasonality and there is a sudden need for last minute spot pricing, those prices go up fast and they go up higher than we would expect from the year prior. I think the question everybody's now waiting for is like, is there going to be some stickiness? Are they going to start sticking when they shoot up after seasonality? And that's what everybody is on the edge of our seat waiting to find. So yeah, that's kind of speaks to the larger business cycle that's going on. I know Sean has some words about that, so I'll kick it over to him.
Let's
just
see.
real quick, curious. So that cost trend, is that a week over week change at the bottom
Yes.
chart?
Yeah, it's the cost trend takes the price for any given week compared to the prior 4 weeks price, and that kind of helps us center it over the zero axis and gives us like a seismograph needle reading of where pricing indicators are. That's the spikes that we see that help us determine seasonality. One thing that we also look for when outbound prices are spiking are our inbound prices also going down. There are some false indicators where an outbound price will spike, but does not seem to be any word going out that there is loads coming out of that area. And so that's something that I look for when I'm trying to see if it's really seasonal or not, is like, do people want to go and pick up loads there? If not, then it's probably something else besides seasonality.
I can give a quick story about that. I mean, when I was brokering freight for Convoy before I was at Greenscreens. And yeah, when I was on the floor, I was a Midwest guy, and we would, like, at the beginning of the season, the produce season, probably April-ish, we would get calls. We'd have loads we'd win from St. Louis to Miami, or Chicago to Miami, and our prices would just plummet because everybody's trying to get down to Miami because they know that they can come out of Miami and just crush it, making 2 or 3 times what they did previous. So, yeah, kind of a cool thing. You can see it in the opposite direction. With regards to what's going on in macro and like how we like to think about how the market is potentially turning around over as a whole, we could get into that now if you want, or we could keep going and get into it right at the end.
I got something else to say, don't I?
Okay. Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah. So just we definitely see the most price effect in reefer. We measured everywhere else. Van seasonality does happen. There's lots of produce that can go on van. It's not quite as temperature and time sensitive. So part of that is demand. A little bit of that is reefer can serve as a excess capacity sponge and for van. And so when the reefer capacity is tight, then that starts to push the van prices up as well. We don't really see anything. We do see a region that will start popping off in terms of flatbed pricing. There are, some produce grown things that can and do go on flatbed, but it's not showing up in our numbers at all, really. It's pretty random. So yeah, van and reefer definitely is where you're going to have a annual price effect.
Okay.
Do you guys in your data, like, okay, you have all the individual load data. Do you know if something is a produce load?
Sometimes, yeah. We have a wide gamut of customer help in that regards. Some of our customers is just everything is FAK. Some of them we get very high.
I imagine more often than not, it's the data is not always great, but like, I guess I mean, you guys, in a perfect world, you guys are able to measure what percentage of produce loads end up on a van versus not, and how that changes over time, right? Like,
yeah.
If you know all the load data from your customers, then as long as obviously this is assuming that they're entering the loads properly, that they're selecting the proper equipment type. There's a bunch of potential ways it could be awry, but like,
I would just, to outline the biggest part of this problem, I would say, Reed, is that everybody marks things differently. So like, one broker might mark it as produce, another broker might mark it as like frozen goods, another might mark it as cold goods, another might mark it as carrots, another might mark it as apples, and so like putting that all into one group is really difficult across 170 customers or however many we're at now.
I mean, isn't like how do we move? How does that change though? Does it ever change? Or are we just gonna forever tell people you just do whatever the heck you want and just know that the data is gonna suffer as a result? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, we've got some ideas to test. We haven't done much of it yet, but
I mean, isn't there an incentive on your guys' side, like from your guys' perspective, to like encourage your customers to normalize their data to the extent that they can? Like because especially if they're looking at like more aggregate data across all your customers, like isn't that like a strong incentive on your guys' part? I know you may not be able to, like, you can't hold a gun to their head and be like, you must use this way of tracking
I'm
everything.
curious, but
Yeah.
Reed, why would that make a difference in the sense of like the rates? Isn't that the most important thing? Is like what was a rate for what?
I'm just
rates
curious, are just like rates to me just seem like, okay, great rates, but like what else? You know, like
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
So
just
I
to get a
mean,
deeper
I think
understanding,
you're
basically.
yeah, I think Reed, you're spot on for certain things. Like for alcohol, it has a big effect on price. We know that. For like tires, we've heard that it has, everybody's got their ideas of like what it has an effect on, what affects price, what commodity affects price. And so yeah, there's definitely stuff that we can do, but putting it on the customers is probably difficult to do. I think
Totally.
there's
Yeah.
there's definitely some ways in which we can study it and maybe figure out ways to do it, in that like with some of this new natural language processing stuff, maybe we can build groups of freight
Yeah,
together.
you can be like, hey, okay, you can start to learn how each person categorizes things, and then over time you can start to build buckets of things based on your knowledge of how they categorize them. And then you can get to a point, maybe long term, where you're able to say, okay, this is the seasonal rate on all tomato loads, or this is the seasonal rate on all XYZ produce loads, whatever, right? I mean, isn't that, because the whole point of this
Yeah,
is
I mean
like,
that's
Yeah.
ideal, and we will be doing a bunch of that research here in the coming year. But yeah, as of now, we don't have a great way to do it. Yeah,
Just taking notes here. We'll buy you a beer at some point.
product
and,
ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you were always like, everybody knows that every single type of produce, like any carrier who hauls produce will price differently based on the commodity, obviously, because there's nuance in there. You know, the difference between hauling
Yep.
like fresh berries is in the volatility in that is a lot different than hauling, onions at the same temperature.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're very different, and everyone's going to price it
Yep.
differently. And it's more than just the volatility of the commodity itself. It's the shipping and the receiving of those facilities of those commodities as well, right? Like produce coolers are a pain in the ass, and they take a million years to get loaded, and certain ones are worse than other ones, and people know that. So the price will vary based on that specific stuff, but it is a lot more. It might not be as clear in the data, that story, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, it's just
Yeah, the
it is a
muddiness
complex
stuff.
issue. It is pretty complex.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big operational challenge. Even if you set a standard to,
I don't envy you guys. This is it's difficult to get good at that. But I mean, I feel like your goal is to do that to the extent that you can, right? I mean,
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there's ways in which, again, you're not going to be satisfied with this because it's price based. But there's ways in which
don't
we
worry
can.
about satisfying me. Don't worry about. I'm not paying you guys. I'm not paying you guys any money. So don't worry about me.
Yeah, fair.
I'm just guessing.
There's ways in which the model works off of a zip to zip basis, and so the model will pick up differences in zip by zip nuance. So like if you're getting loads that are out of a given zip that and they're all coming from like say a very same receiver, similar receiver, and that price will be slightly different and reflective of that zip's characteristics than even like the next zip over. It's not going to be too different, but there will be some slight differences there. And so there's a way that we kind of do it, but yeah, you're spot on. I mean, if we can normalize commodity, I think it would be a huge boon to us, and that's something
Yeah,
we're going to be working on. Yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah. Sweet. So
Yeah.
then shameless
That's a
plug.
good segue.
What do people do about it?
That's a great segue, man.
So, exactly. So what do people do about it, right? So so at Greenscreens, we have a way in which our customers can mark up their freight based on a bunch of different rules, right? So they can add a rule from a given market to somewhere. They could mark it as van or reefer, whatever they want to do, and add markup to anything that comes through. So the model will still give them the truck cost, and then their sell cost will be marked up. They can also, I mean, they can do this on any number of lanes and all of that. And then we also have a new product, Ignite, that really shows what's going on with your rules, why they're performing the way they're performing. Are they performing well? Are you winning a lot? Are you not winning a lot? And what's your margin on those that you're winning, all that stuff. So what's the market margin right now versus yours? So there's a lot of really cool stuff that we've built to show customers, as long as they're quoting through us or giving us their quote data, what's actually going on with their data. So yeah, and then I had this contract versus spot prices through time. We could take a look at it. I think I might have to reshare though. Is that screen share? Here we go.
Shout out to Lombard.
No BS, GS. Let's go. I love it.
We can get Michael Lombard on the show right now.
That's beautiful. So here's this contract versus spot prices through time. We think this is one of the best signals as to what is to what's going to signal a bull market versus just like the standard kind of bear flat market we've been in.
And what are we showing?
What you can see here,
we're showing here. From
So from we're looking back to 2021 till now, and we're looking at spot rates. So what's the spot shipper cost? So this is expensiveness with shipper. Sometimes we call expensiveness pure cost too. So this is expensiveness for shipper cost on your spot rates versus your contract rates. So we have a way to delineate what's contract and what's spot in our data, based on like whether the contract characteristics exist, right? Whether somebody's running with the same shipper on the same lane multiple times in a month, for multiple months in a row, right? So we can see like what's actually a contract versus not. And so what we've got here is purple line is spot and blue line is contract. And that purple line increases when the market is increasing, the spot rates increase faster than the contract rates, right? They're more volatile and they increase faster. And so you can see that right here, as that bull market was ending, spot prices were still higher until it really did end in January, February of last year, and then spot rates fell below contract rates, and you can see they've continued to be below basically through the entire last 2.5 years or so, ever since we got out of that bull run. And the only times in which spot increases higher than contract rates in a bear market like we've been in is on certain holidays. So right here, December 26th through January 1st, end of year. Right here's the same thing, and sometimes when they're close, it can happen. So like, is that Labor Day maybe? Something like that. And then right here was that storm. Remember we were talking about that storm earlier? That storm kept spot rates elevated much higher than contract rates for a few weeks. But there was just a slow winnowing around down. And then I think, there was like 3 months ago, I think if you talk to most people, there was like a despair in the market that was setting in. And I think this was what was happening. Your spread between contract and spot was so deep, and it had been so bad for so long that people were just like losing it. A couple of businesses, bigger businesses, went out of business at this point. And since then, we've seen a retightening of contract versus spot. And we've seen a spike for 4th of July where spot rates have increased above contract. This latest week, the full amount of data is not in yet, so I'm not sure what exactly will go on here. But I mean, I think if there's no holiday or no like major event, huge hurricane, huge snowstorm, and the contract rate stays below the spot rate for a few weeks, then that's a signal to us that there's a tightening in the market that's probably going to expand and continue. So if this happens, but without a storm or Christmas, or 4th of July or whatever the holiday might be. So yeah, that's what our expectation is for like kind of what we're watching to see when rates will return. I mean, I don't know. Our customers have talked a little bit about tightness coming back, not too crazy. Justin's closer to our customers than I am, but so he can give you a little bit more color there. I think we still have a little ways to go before that tightness comes back, but I don't know. I can't give you a date as to when prices will increase. Maybe we could say end of year, maybe we could say next year. Not sure. Beginning of next year. Tough to say. But this is what we're watching. And once this flips for a few weeks in a row and there's no reason for it,
I mean, isn't the value like in a perfect world you would be able to provide educated guesses, right, on when things will flip, because isn't that the entire like value of looking at the data, right? Isn't the whole point of data to look at the past to inform your actions in the future? Isn't that the point? Like,
totally.
I mean,
totally. And we are actually like the machine learning team is developing a long-term pricing product, and it'll be out at the end of this year. And maybe we can use that to really effectively tell when there's going to be a flip. But I can't tell you like when a week is, because like if you look up here at the top, what would you call the top of the market? Would you call it
January 2022
or December? Maybe December.
January.
Would you call it, or like when did softness start to enter the market? Maybe like, I don't know, November. It's really tough to say like when this flip truly happened. And we can say like December, January into maybe February, March, I think is really when we can say comfortably when it happened. But it's not like there's just a peak or a bottom that just happens like in the stock market, right? Because like every lane is slightly different, and so different lanes move through time differently, and so I don't know, it's tough to say like, oh yeah, we're going to start feeling it and everybody's going to start making more money here in a month or 2 months. It's just, yeah, it's a tough one to say. I don't know.
I mean, sorry, go ahead.
I mean, everyone's trying to predict, and everyone's like has like a ton of predictions, and it seems like no one really knows what's going to happen. And it's like, even with like the quote saying history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. Like, it's like, I think like with data, it's similar where like you can't really predict when it's going to flip. You could like have some kind of, I don't know, understanding of what might happen that might, I don't know, create some kind of changes overall. But I would say it's so difficult to predict. And I would say like every time you go on LinkedIn or like you read some publication, there's predictions on when the market's going to change. And it seems like, no one really, like everyone's just kind of guessing with what they have from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I mean, our goal in our product is to predict spot rates as effectively as we can, right? And so that's
exactly. like the current
max
day, like
10
today.
days out, right? That's the
10
goal.
days out, yeah.
And so that's really our prime sweet spot of what we've built and what we've honed in on for the past 3-4 years, however long we've been around. Long term is definitely on the roadmap, and we'll build something for that. But I don't want to tell you something like all these pundits tell you, and then a week later they have to revise what they said because they said that things were going to go through the roof. I mean, I remember at the beginning of the year.
But I didn't know anybody wanted. I didn't know it was important. This whole time I was like, so if you guys want to start sending me bids, I'll let you know the time and the place.
Yeah.
And
I love it.
Awesome.
I love it.
All right.
Good
Well,
stuff.
gentlemen, thank you so much for
It's-
coming. This was great, very informative. If you haven't checked out Green Screens, go check them out. They're love them as a Freight Caviar sponsor for some time now as well. And yeah, love what you guys are doing. Thank you again for coming on. I got to run for a demo, but we'll catch up some other time.
thank you for having
Sean,
us.
Justin, yeah, thanks for coming on. We'll get this summarized and also included in Freight Caviar. Wishing you all an amazing rest of your Friday and amazing weekend, and take care.
Cool. See you
Yeah.
guys.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good
See ya.
weekend. Great talking with you guys.
See you guys.
Bye.
Yep.
See ya.